Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. This weekend at the Gettysburg show, I scanned this photograph, and he is William C. Harris. Perhaps not a name that is known to you. And in fact, if you look on Google or your favorite search engine and search for William C. Harris of the California Regiment or the 71st Pennsylvania Infantry, you will not find this portrait. In fact, I wasn't able to find any portrait of this man. So if you're watching right now, you're seeing this image published, at least on YouTube, for the first time. Now, William Harris was a member of the California Regiment, which was formed by Colonel Ned Baker, the U.S. Senator from Oregon, who wanted desperately to be in the war. He was the first standing U.S. Senator, and to my knowledge, the only U.S. Senator to be killed in battle. That battle was Bluff, where Harris was captured and spent the next 4 months in a prisoner of war camp in Richmond, in an old tobacco house in Richmond, which we all know today as Libby Prison. He got out in February of 1862 and immediately went to work to write his memoirs of that experience, which was published the same year in 1862. The name of his book is not one that might catch your attention immediately because it doesn't mention Libby Prison. The title is Prison Life in the Tobacco Warehouse at Richmond. It's a great volume, and I've included the link here for you to read if you get a chance. There's some really fascinating information. And like me, if you're interested in primary source material, you're getting fresh recollections from someone who just spent a chunk of his life, 4 months imprisoned. And so, for a cabinet maker who had no ambitions to be in the army, to go from being that to being in a volunteer regiment to being in prison, the experience really shaped who he was. And his narrative does a great job in capturing all the details. So I recommend it to you. To give you a flavor of what his writing is like and how he captured the experience of being a prisoner of war, I want to take you to the end of the book when he's released. I think you'll like this bit of a detail. So, a couple of things that you're going to hear when I read this passage is that he is on a boat. We're in late February of 1862. We're on a boat that's leaving Richmond, and the destination is to meet a flag of truce boat, a Union flag of truce boat. And this Confederate vessel is packed with 250 enlisted men and officers, plus the crew. Now, this Confederate boat is heading for this rendezvous with this federal boat. And once the transfer happens, all of the men, all the Union men, are going to go to Newport News and then on to Fortress Monroe. So you're going to hear Newport News mentioned, you're going to hear Fortress Monroe mentioned, and you're going to hear the mention of two ships, the Congress and the Cumberland, which of course are famously or infamously destroyed by a crazy ironclad vessel called the CSS Virginia, known to many people also as the Merrimack. So let me get into this passage for you. Let me put you right now on that boat on a cold February day in 1862, leaving Richmond. And so here we go. Quote, supper over, we searched for, but found not, sleeping accommodations. Some lay upon the floor, over the baggage, and on the settees, whilst others played whist, euchre, and etc. the entire night, unable to sleep for want of room. Our courteous jailers, in the meantime, snoring melodiously in their comfortable berths. And so the night passed away. As the morning broke, the scene on deck was a pitiful one. The men lay huddled together, shivering with cold, and those on the upper deck pelted and drenched with the falling rain. But amidst it all might be seen bright, expectant faces with cheerful smile and speech. Poor fellows! They knew how soon their sufferings would be ended, yet impatience seemed the characteristic of all. The pilot, captain, crew, and even the engineers and Negro waiters were pestered constantly by the inquiry, quote, "How far is it to Newport News?" And when answered, they seemed never satisfied, except by comparison, each with his neighbor, of the replies they had received. Onward we sped, and at last the black hulls of the Jamestown and Patrick Henry, two Confederate steamers, appeared in sight. Beyond them might be seen a small speck upon the water, which eager eyes soon discovered to be the Federal flag of truce boat. The fact was announced on the deck and through the cabins, and we all crowded to see once more the flag towards which our hearts yearned, and around which gathers the pride of every true soldier's heart. As the breeze opened its cherished folds, 250 voices shouted and roared with wild enthusiasm. Cheer after cheer was given and continued until, from exhaustion, the tumult of gladness became silenced. The two boats were tied together. The Confederate officer handed to the Federal officer a list of names of those privates released, and as each name was called, the owner passed with a skip and a jump upon the national steamer, where he soon appeared on the upper deck with an immense chunk of bread and ham, holding it tantalizingly up to his companions remaining on board the rebel boat, oftentimes with the remark, quote, "No mule meat about this, boys." The privates' list being concluded, that of the officers was called. As each name was announced, the officer passed upon the United States steamer, stopping to grasp cordially the hands of the Federal officers. At last, all were aboard, and we dashed down to the river. Newport News was reached. The shore for miles was lined with soldiers who greeted us with loud huzzas and cheer upon cheer. The rigging of the ill-fated Cumberland and Congress was filled with their stalwart crews, who added lustily to the enthusiastic greeting. We replied with fatigue and hoarseness, rendered us incapable of further exertion. We arrived at Fortress Monroe on the 23rd of February, 1862, having been confined by the rebels 4 months. So there you have it. The account, the memory, the reminiscences of William C. Harris of the California Regiment, later known as the 71st Pennsylvania Infantry, in his 1862 about prison life in a tobacco warehouse that we know today as Libby Prison. So take care. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the